Orc, the bardic paladin, who sings and plays again. He tells the tales of glory and weaves a magic story. He'll join you at your table and ask you to share a fable. Heroes of humble origin, villains who must be fought again. No matter their skill or prowess, the people in life are countless. So we pray you heed our request. Enjoy this tale of sidekicks and side quests.
Episode 120, Penance, the Quaggoth Clairvoyant. Welcome to Sidekicks and Side Quests, the Dungeons & Dragons podcast that helps to put humans back into humanity and breathe life into your campaign NPCs with backstory and bravado. That's right, we're building a world, one character at a time. I am your host, Seth Crenwelge, the Bardic Paladin, and I'll be joining Seth Crenwelge's table in the Levitating Platter. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of Sidekicks and Side Quests, the best unofficial Dungeons & Dragons podcast, in my humbly biased opinion. I've got a wonderful guest for you this week, but before I get to my guest, I got to leave you in suspense with the ad read. So you know my good buddy Tony Vicinda is the brains behind the operations there at Plus One EXP, and he has a brand new subscription service that he would like you to know about and to give a try. It's called RPG Zine Club. It's a monthly membership subscription service that's featuring fresh zines from emerging and expanding creators across the globe. It's our way of inviting GMs, players, and zine lovers everywhere to invest more intentionally in the creative community. So what it has to offer are monthly releases where they put out two 20 to 44 page saddle stitch zines, and there's 3 different kinds of membership, whether you are interested in story zines, adventure zines, or both. You can pick your format of print and digital together or just digital of your favorite titles. And there is an exclusive area on the Discord server of Plus One EXP called the Clubhouse, where you can talk about titles. Your subscriptions guarantee you the best price for each title during the month it's released, as well private subscription portal where you can manage your subscription, add products, or change your information. You can change the frequency in which you'd like to receive these games, whether you want to be monthly or any other variation of time. You only get what you want, so if this month's release isn't your jam, pause for a month and pick it back up. And if you miss a month, why, you can add recent titles to your month's order as well. Annual surprise, get a special surprise each February after your first anniversary. That's pretty cool. You know, access to interviews, how to play videos, and special content for Zine Club. Of course, there is the RPG Zine Club passports that come with this program. And if you redeem your passport at a convention where Tony's at, you can redeem it for a slice of pizza. Of course, you know, this whole endeavor is seeking to partner and work with new as well as your favorites within the indie scene. It's DIE focused as well, you know, trying to champion diversity, inclusion, and equity in projects, and getting to work with creators with diverse experiences that help to make the community better. Again, there's just so much information I could sit here and read to you. But if you want to learn more, the best place that you're going to go to find out that information is at rpgzine.club. Again, rpgzine.club. And that's part of, as well, if you go to the website plus1exp.com, when you're on that website and you need an affiliate code to put in the box to get a discount on your beard balms, lip balms, or beard RPGs or whatnot, make sure you type in the code Randolph at checkout. Again, on the website plus1exp.com, and make sure you check out the brand new RPG Zine Club, rpgzine.club. All right, well, I am joined by family, by a blast from the past. So for those who are new to the podcast and haven't had the pleasure of being introduced to you the first time, would you care to introduce yourself to our lovely audience? Tell us who it is that you are and what is it that you do?
Yeah, my name's Seth Crenwelge. Shared last names with said podcast host, cousins. And I'm a humble college student about to graduate should be this time next year, sometime about aspiring writer and human being trying to make it through this Sisyphean task of life.
You were one of the people that I had the opportunity to speak with in the beginning part of the pandemic, where I was just like going through so many recordings and getting a backlog ready. So
Yes.
that was really awesome to get to talk to you. And you brought us Ignum
Ignum
last time.
Eldeus, yes.
Yeah.
Which that character has since been long finished and done. What he was a part of because I was still like running him as a character
Right.
when I did that episode. I think by the time the episode came out, his story had wrapped up and finished. I have actually gone back and listened to that episode, and I was like, wow, the character's changed kind of a lot since then.
Very cool. And yeah, and I was just remembering you were like, "Oh, I'm in college," and I think maybe we were trying to figure out like, "Oh, were you settled on this one major or the other?" But it sounds like you're getting ready to graduate with a degree in English or literature or something.
Yeah, yeah, English with an emphasis in creative writing.
Ooh.
Um, I was gonna do a minor in classics, but that's kind of complex to do here at my university, so I'm not gonna do that.
Well, you should be pleased to know that since your episode, I did have the opportunity to speak with a fellow UNLV alumni in the form of Johnny Stanton IV, who did have a small, brief stint of time there.
Oh,
So yeah, that's pretty cool. So
very
there's a
cool.
Kevin Bacon degree of separation there.
Sick.
Yeah, so pretty cool. We love Johnny Stanton. He's doing great stuff in the D&D community. So, of course, since you're a returning guest, not that it's a preferential thing because you're family, but we like to work our way back through the questions as we're getting to reacquaint ourselves with the guest. So, before we started rolling, you were saying, "Oh, it's been a while since I've played," so I feel like that's a pretty easy segue into the last time since we talked again, way back when in 2020. Have you had the
Mhm.
opportunity to play any D&D or any other kinds of TTRPGs since the last time we spoke?
Yeah, I think the last time I probably played was D&D was probably in either 2020 or 2021, and then I have since branched out and have been playing a multitude of other tabletop RPG games with my friend group online.
Okay.
Yeah, we kind of strayed away from Dungeons and Dragons for a while and have been, let's see, what did we play? We've played Star Wars Saga Edition. We've done Dark Heresy, the Warhammer
Ooh.
tabletop, and we've done Black Crusade, which is another Warhammer one, and Call of Cthulhu, and just like
Hmm.
a bunch. Like we've kind of been dabbling and kind of throwing our feet into every water, every pond, splashing in every pond we can.
Yeah,
Uh, I haven't gotten a chance to get back around playing D&D. I'd love to do it in person, but my in-person group is kind of very also a bunch of college students,
sure.
and
You've
all like
got
STEM.
competing majors and competing schedules, I'm sure.
Yeah, which is just dreadful to try and line up during the semester. So
Hmm. Okay. Well, that sounds great. Yeah. And being able to explore other games, just helps to sharpen your role playing, creative thinking muscles anyway.
oh, absolutely. It's I like the way I approach characters and like everything, and even the way I run games now is so different after having done it. Because we would do a thing where like one person would run one and everyone else would play, and then we'd kind of switch DMs every few weeks. Like we'd have little stories.
Mhm.
So pretty much everybody in our, I think, group of four got a chance to run in every game system that we played, which was actually really fun. Like getting to familiarize yourself with making a character and then like how to actually run it, just different skills you learn and that carry over to different RPGs too. So it's definitely changed like how I approach making a character and how I approach like even running a game.
As you're familiar with this podcast, being called something like Sidekicks and Side Quests, have you come across any new or interesting NPCs or sidekick characters, whether they be from, again, one of the many games you've played on the tabletop, virtual or otherwise, video games, movie, film, television, etc.? And why has this new NPC or sidekick character stuck with you?
Ooh, the new Star Wars game, Jedi Survivor, the Night Sister, what's her name? Marin. I really like her, and I really like Seer from those games. I played both of them,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it was it this year that the new one came out? It might have been. I
The
don't remember.
second one came out this year. That's correct.
Yeah, yeah, I remember playing that one, and like I like the whole story with like Marin. I love Star Wars, so like
Of
anything more
course.
Star Wars is amazing.
I think it's safe to say the Crenwelges are a pretty pro Star Wars
Pro Star
family.
Wars.
I can visibly recall in my memory being over at my grandmother and grandfather's house in central Texas, and it being summer, and I see little itty bitty Seth running around, and then we have the prequel trilogy movies going on.
Yeah.
And for me, it had been like, a decade or so when those had come out. So it was like, yes, definitely Star Wars has been a big part of our family for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So like in recent memory, pretty sure like that whole game series made me cry at the end.
Hmm.
I just like I love those characters, and they were really well written too. Like just since I'm now an English major, I like actually look for like what makes a character good and stuff. So like being able to get into characters and what makes them good, what makes them emotional, what connects you to them is something I always look for in media now,
Hmm.
because it's ways to improve my own writing too. So like just viewing those, and also they're like badass. They're just like cool. There's some cool scenes like Seer fights like Darth Vader, and like you get to play and fight Darth Vader, and it's so cool. Anything with Darth Vader is cool though. Like
Of
you
course.
can't really go wrong with him. Yeah,
No.
I think last time I think I said, I'm trying to remember. I think I said Shepard from Mass Effect. He's also another good one.
Hmm.
And of course, like Anakin and Darth Vader are classics, and Luke. But yeah, you could go on about Star Wars. There's a lot.
For sure, yeah. Especially in between all the other Star Wars universe shows that have been coming out
Oh
on Disney
boy,
Plus. For
that's
sure,
a whole nother conversation.
that's a whole other podcast.
That's a that is a whole other situation going on there. But yeah, yeah, the games are good. I will say
Mhm.
that the games that they have released are good.
Indeed. And same thing. What's been a new or interesting side quest or B plot element that has really captured your attention since 2020? Again, like it's from one of your games. It's a B plot element in a film, television show, etc. And what makes this one interesting or different or stand out?
Oh boy, I don't know about from games, but I have done a bit of reading, fits the bill. And there's a book series that I really have fallen in love with these past few years. It's science fiction. It's called Sun Eater, and it's to put it simply, it's like the Roman Empire in space with eldritch horrors abound.
Okay.
It is a lot more interesting than I'm making it sound, but for the sake of me not rambling on for 40 minutes about it, it's really interesting. And the main character Hadrian has this whole plot where like he's essentially trying to stop these abominations from taking over the universe in a very
Okay.
roundabout way. And there's like aliens and everything, and I just really love. Sorry, I don't know if it's a B plot, but the way the author Christopher Arrocchio develops like alien culture and
Hmm.
like perceives it through humanity's eyes, because the series starts
Oh.
and Hadrian, like the alien war has been going on for a long time, and he thinks he can make peace with them. But then you later learn that these aliens are so drastically different from humans that the main character was just like projecting his own views of humanity onto this alien species and thinking that
Hmm.
like we could actually make peace. But you actually learn that the alien language doesn't have a word for like surrender or like peace. Like their word
Hmm.
for essentially like a compromise is, it essentially amounts to less than, like you are submit, it's like submission. So like a
Hmm.
compromise to them is like submission and like surrender. And just seeing the cultural differences with that, like it's not really like, it is a main part of the story, but if you don't like really take time to think about it, it doesn't really, like the full grasp of it doesn't really hit you.
Hmm.
And I really like that the books make you think. I've been attracted to books that make my mind work recently, and it's
I
sort
was
of Dune-esque as well. It does have Dune vibes,
Mhm.
with like very much swords in space, like laser swords in space, just better. In my, yeah.
I was going to say that reminds me because the D&D I've been doing lately is I've been running one-on-one D&D via Google Docs with a friend. And we just came across this interesting point the other day when you said like, oh, the alien language has no basis for like peace or compromise or surrender. And so my player has come across the infernal language. And so I ruled, her character was asking like, oh, do you have like a concept for love? And so then the NPC responded and was saying like, "Oh, no, we don't have like that is a foreign concept to like the evil gods who constructed this language. They have no basis for what love is." And then he lists a bunch of other words like satiated or appeased or like other words that like dance around it, but nothing that truly means love. So it was kind of like eye-opening discovering this character. I roughly in the moment came up with an analogy of like, oh, infernal and abyssal is like the same relationship between Portuguese and Spanish. Like they sound
Mm,
similar, but they're actually very quite different. And so an infernal speaker will call like an abyssal language speaker lazy. And then an abyssal language speaker will say like, oh, the infernal is like too prim and proper and, doesn't have a real
yeah.
grasp on language. And so I thought that was kind of a funny insight I came up with. But yeah, yeah. So the things
Yeah.
you can learn from your favorite book series, you could just as easily apply into a D&D setting,
Oh,
especially
absolutely. And
if
like,
you're like, you're going to crusade down into hell and like we've got the devils on the rope. And then in Infernal, you learn that like, oh, we do have a word for surrender, but it means when we're in the dominant position, not from when we're in the weak
yeah.
position or something like that.
Yeah, like, and I'm learning Spanish right now, or at least trying to, because I have to. Like learning another language, and then like thinking, like experiencing how that changes how you think, because it does play into like people say knowing another language is like having another soul,
Mhm.
And I agree with that to an extent of like it certainly changes how you think and how you perceive the meaning of words, which is something I think about a lot because I'm an English major. So yeah.
There we go. And then the final way that we'll round out this personal interview section catch up bit is what has been a new or interesting hobby or passion that you've gotten in your life, and why is this stuck with you?
Whew, boy. I mean, I love writing. It's not really new. I've been writing since I was like a tiny child. I remember writing at my Omi's house,
Mhm.
on the couch when I was very, very young, making terrible, terrible stories that I still have to this day, and I look back at to humble myself. Um, my sixth grade writing, yeah. I have recently started playing tabletop Warhammer 40K, which is really like I never expected to be like a war gamer and like a table like that kind of tabletop gamer. But my friend is really into it, and he actually bought me some miniatures to like because you have to like cut them out of the sprues and then glue them together and build them and then paint them.
Paint
I haven't
them.
painted them.
Oh,
I've
all right.
painted.
Okay, so you're following a tradition where you just acquire them, you make them, but then you never
Yes,
actually
I've
paint them.
painted some. I've painted some. It's just very time consuming to paint them.
Hmm.
Like it takes an astronomical amount of time to do one, and I have a lot because he got me a bunch, and I was like, oh, cool. We played some low point games, and then I was like, oh, I'll get some more, and I got some more, and now I have like a full 2,000 point army, and we play pretty regularly. I go over to his house or we go to our local game store and we play. It's a lot of fun. Like I really like it. It just is number one really expensive. It is so expensive, and it takes a lot of time. Not only do you have to buy them, which is crazy amounts of money, in my opinion, for plastic. You have to then spend the time to cut them out, glue them together, and then paint them and then learn the rules. And then like I did not think I would want to get into it. Like I thought when he
Hmm.
bought me some, I'd build them, we'd play, I'd forget about it. But I like kept coming back to it. I was like, it's kind of fun. It's just hang out with my friends and like imaginary shoot stuff.
Hmm.
And I play the Adeptus Sororitas, the Sisters of Battle, if you know what that means.
Oh, okay. See,
They're
my only
the
experience goes back to my junior high days, and this is
hmm,
takes us back way back when to the early 2000s.
yeah,
And
prehistoric.
my friends wanted to play, and my parents got me some Imperial Guard. I guess that's what they were called then. So I had like a little bit of Imperial Guard, And so then what our hangouts would be whenever we got together to play, three of my friends would be busy arguing about which characters you couldn't use. And then the remaining two of us would be like, wow, look at this thing I made and I painted it and it's so cool. And so, yeah, eventually that all fizzled out and I ended up selling my stuff to another kid in the neighborhood. I'm sure for a steal. So, obviously, thank you, mom and dad, for making that sacrifice to buy that stuff, only for me to then
I'm
months
sure it was a
later turn
lot
around and sell it.
cheaper back then. I'm sure it was a lot cheaper back then. The prices have gone up for everything.
Oh, yeah. Inflation, don't you know, for sure.
Yeah. I don't think I'll ever get heavily into it simply because it takes too much time. It takes so much time. But like what I have now is probably what I'll keep for until like we don't play anymore, and then I'll sell it. But yeah, it's fun. It's a hobby. I hang out with my friends and we do it. It's nothing. We're not like competitive, like super competitive. I know there's like tournaments and stuff. Never been to one of those.
And painting competitions, like, just people who spend their time painting miniatures and then, submitting them for contests and stuff.
Yeah, mine would probably not not do very well in painting competitions. They're passable at a distance.
Sure. Yeah, they have like the weird eyeballs that face different directions or whatever.
Yeah, that's just like little dots. Yeah, it works. You're not looking at them up close most of the time.
All right. Well, it sounds like we did awesome here in the personal catch-up interview section. And now it's time to head into some NPC creation.
Let's do it.
And NPC creation is brought to you by you, the podcast audience, and our patrons from Patreon. So, of course, I have to give a shout out to all of my fine supporters. So, the queen of the Patreon, of course, being Katie Downey, aka Goblin Katie, as well our other wealthy level patrons, including Anson Jablinski, Nicholas Cardarelli, and then Mr. and Mrs. Crenwelge, my parents. So thank you so much, everyone, for your support of the podcast. Again, just donating $2 a month gets you a shout out. And all of these people I mentioned, being at least the wealthy level, get to introduce an element of chance to our random tables, which I think we're going to use here today. So if you want to learn more and join the coolest Patreon community out there, go into the show notes below, go to my podcast website, or just go directly to patreon.com/sidekicks and side quests to learn more about our tiers and accommodations at the Levitating Platter. Help us expand our operations in this demi-plane and worlds beyond. Okay, so before we started rolling, since you did not have a character prepared this time like you did last time, you have opted for the path of random. Are you ready to embark?
Oh, I'm so ready for the path of random.
Okay, excellent. All right. Well, without further ado, we begin this dog and pony show with a roll of the D20 to figure out what is going to be the name of our character today.
Oh boy. Grab my D20 and roll that bad boy. I got a 2.
2. Okay. Your answer was provided by previous guest Joshua Simons, Penance.
Penance.
Yeah.
That is a cool name.
Okay, and then the next thing we get to roll for is the ancestry of the character. So this is where you get to do a 2d10 D100 roll. And this is where it could swing wildly. So let's figure out what ancestry Penance is.
Okay, let's do this. D100. 62.
62 as I scroll down the list. Okay, so Penance is a Quaggoth.
A Quaggoth?
Yes, so those are the bear-like anthropomorphic guys from the Underdark.
I think I ran a Quaggoth prince as a villain in one of my campaigns once.
Oh. So a quick jog down memory lane and you'll be like, yeah, I know exactly what these guys are all about.
Yeah. How do you spell Quaggoth?
Quaggoth.
Oh, I was thinking of something else. Never mind. But
I'll just cut that out of the podcast.
Okay. Cool. Quaggoth.
All right.
Bear humanoids. Cool.
Yep. And then let's see, what is the job or role in society for Penance the Quaggoth? That will just be a regular D10 roll.
Regular D10. Okay. I got a 5.
5. Ooh, interesting. Okay, a little bit of synergy here. Your answer provided by our Patreon supporter, your aunt, my mom, Pam
Heck yeah.
Crenwelge. Penance is a clairvoyant.
A clairvoyant.
Yeah. So I guess looks into the ethereal and sees the future or something.
Yeah, some sort of future sight. Huh.
Okay. And then let's see the age range of our character. We determined that with the roll of a D8.
D8. 1.
Child. So a
Shot.
child clairvoyant named Penance, that's a Quaggoth. So with these key pieces of information in mind, when you hear Penance, clairvoyant, child, Quaggoth, what is the physical description that comes to mind?
Ooh. I am getting like ritual vibes from this. I think this Quaggoth, I think Penance is small and like scarred from a difficult life, perhaps from self-flagellation for some future sin that they have seen themselves committing, and are forcing penance upon themselves for, because they have not committed it yet, but they will commit it, because they are a believer in destiny.
Wow, that's pretty metal, pretty dark. So yeah, so then interesting for player characters to run across because it's like, well, how can you punish yourself for something you haven't done yet? Well, interesting. Okay, so
Moral
small,
conundrum.
childlike. So any particular? I'm not entirely familiar if Quagoths are necessarily bound to wear clothes, but do you imagine Penance is wearing clothes or robes or anything of that sort of nature?
If anything, I think it would be some tattered, sort of shabby, underdark, like stolen from some drow, like too big for them sort of robes.
Oh.
And they probably carry around, if they're clairvoyant, some sort of like ritualistic bones or something, or dice or runes.
Okay.
Something akin that would like fit the Underdark. Like if you're going to take a bunch of stones and carve runes into them and cast them to see the future, kind of thing.
Okay. So that's how she sees the future. She gets a bunch of runic stones and then like rolls them like dice and then reads it based on how it appears.
Yeah, reading the runes of the future.
Gosh, Penance, read the rune a little bit. Why
Eh,
don't you? Badoom cha. I am a dad. I am allowed to make dad jokes on my own podcast.
you are certainly.
Okay. And then let's see. If you had to describe Penance with 3 adjectives, what 3 adjectives would you use?
Oh boy. Let's see.
Let's challenge the English major and see how good their internal thesaurus is.
Discreet. I think that's an adjective. We'll call it one.
Someone being discreet. Okay.
Yeah. Ooh, let's see. I'm trying to go through my catalog of, my mind palace of words. And by my mind palace of words, I of course mean just all the words that I Google every day.
Sure.
Uh,
Thesaurus.com.
thesaurus.com. Dude, that saves my life so much. I think guilty is guilty an adjective? To be, do they
To
feel
feel guilty?
like, yeah, guilty?
Guilt ridden?
Guilt ridden. Yeah, I think guilt ridden.
Okay.
And oh boy, what's a word for like somebody who's lonely but wants to reach out?
Lonely but wants to reach out, like a feeling of being trapped,
Yeah,
isolated,
yeah, like
yearning.
Yeah, like yearning. Yearning is a good one. Yearning for like connection, but also like
Mm.
afraid of it. So like yearning.
Okay. So discreet, guilt ridden, and but they're yearning. Like they want to connect, but they're too afraid.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, now we get to go back to some dice rolling. So all of our NPCs have to have something cool on them. So what is going to be a valuable item, piece of lore, secret, or ideal or concept that the character would ascribe to? So you roll the D4 first for the category, and then a D6 for the particular thing.
Okay, let's go D4. 2.
This is going to be a piece of lore.
Ooh. 5.
5. Aha. Okay. Well, your answer was provided by previous guest Elizabeth Horsley. Penance knows where a portal to the astral plane is, but it's only big enough for your hand to fit through.
Okay.
And, with Underdark shenanigans, that would make, I feel like that tracks
That
pretty
makes a
well.
lot of
Like, that
sense.
seems like
Yeah.
something you would be able to find in the Underdark.
Yeah, the Underdark's full of crazy, crazy stuff.
So that's cool. And, she's a child. So obviously, at her height perspective of the world, like, she would probably be the one to notice.
Yeah, it's like in some weird hole that only a child can crawl in. And
Yeah. But it's only big now. Is it only big enough for a hand her size, or is it like only big enough for a hand for an adult?
that would be a good question that I would ask you if I was a player and you were the DM of the game.
Oh, and then I'd have to rule. Okay, well then, Dungeon Masters, it's up to you for this piece of lore. How big is the hand-sized portal to the astral plane?
Because then it's like you can only get like maybe a few fingers in if it's a child hand size. And then
Mm-hmm.
what's in the hand size portal?
I don't know. Maybe
Something smaller than a
an
hand size.
interesting question that I've been brought up in this game that I've been playing, the logistical arcane machinations of how the bag of holding works. The idea that it's like, oh, it's just a pocket somewhere within the astral sea of where your items are sitting. And I figured that there must be some sort of hijinks that ensue when someone figures out like this random magic hole and they reach in and they're actually pulling things out of somebody else's bag
Bag
of
of
holding or
holding.
something like that.
Ooh, it's a portal. It's a hand sized portal into somebody's bag of holding.
Like a big bad evil guy or something like that. And then suddenly you pull the important evil item,
MacGuffin.
and
Yeah.
now the bad guy goes into a rage because, like, hey, this important thing, MacGuffin, is now missing, and I'm going to tear
The
up the countryside to try and find
the
it.
heroes don't know what it is, so they can't. They don't know that they shouldn't take it,
Right. Or they
or
just
they
get useful
or they
items out of
do it.
it that
Yeah,
they don't have
yeah,
any
yeah.
reason to normally get. It's like, well, I just found this
Here's
hole and this magic, a holy Avenger was in it, so I guess
here's
I
a
take it now.
yeah.
Finders
Here's a
keepers.
hole. Here's a bunch of magic items. Here you go.
Yeah. Pretty cool ideas. We give those away for free on this podcast. So
That
hopefully
is true.
that will make it into your game. So, okay. And then as we've had the time to learn about this character, this next question you could totally do on your own if you wanted, or if you want to keep with the theme of random, we need a side quest that Penance would be willing to offer or recruit player characters to go and do on her behalf. So if you want to roll randomly, the last dice, D12, or if you're inspired, go ahead and lay it on us, or do a combo of both.
Let's roll and see what we get. I like sticking to random, and let's see what I can do with it when. Let's see.
Yeah.
7.
7. Ah, okay. Another response provided by our previous guest, Joshua Simons. Do an odd job in town. Do you think that fits with Penance? If she's a
Yeah, I could.
clairvoyant, does she know something about this odd job, maybe?
Yeah, I think Penance, Underdark resident, but certainly I think is more attuned to the outside world and perhaps a bit older than her age gives to her or makes her seem, because you can see into the future. I feel like that gives you a little bit of maturity, maybe like you're experiencing the
Mm.
outside world. You're still a child. You don't have that sense of logic, but you're a little bit maybe more mature than the average duck. Maybe
Common
Penance.
phrase. You're more mature
Yes.
than the average duck. Put that
You
on a
know.
t-shirt.
Yeah, maybe Penance needs some component for something, or perhaps some small butterfly effect of retrieving an object will cause something else to happen that Penance has
Mm.
seen and needs to happen. And so needs this thing to happen.
She's
She
been
could even
waiting for someone to come along to do the thing that she needs done in order for the next thing to go off like how she saw it in the vision or whatever.
yeah,
Or
yeah,
that the
and
runes told her this was supposed to happen and she's like, "Well, how am I supposed to make that happen?" kind of a
she's a
thing.
believer in destiny, so she has to make the thing happen.
Mm,
Because it's kind of is what people who believe in destiny do. They just make the things that they see happen
okay. And so,
sometimes.
regardless of whatever that's going to be, okay, so the DM sets forward something, some odd job in town, and she needs you to do it. Okay, interesting. Is she going to be
Yeah,
very upfront about why she needs the players to do it, or is she just insistent that like they need to do this thing?
I think she's like kind of kooky seer, like oh, there's that old seer at the edge of the village who lives in the abandoned shack with the big hole in it in the
Mm.
ground that leads to the Underdark, or in the basement. Go see her. She needs help, and then it's just like through the door, or maybe like through a slit in the wall or something. She's like, "Yes, do this thing." I don't know why I gave her like old hag voice, but you know, she's eccentric.
Sure. Okay. All right. So she needs the players to do an odd job in the town in order to fulfill, what she's seen or what she's predicted. So what is going to be the reward for the players once they return to her successfully reporting that, hey, we did the thing you asked us to do?
She'd probably be willing to that hole in the astral plane. I mean, it's not like it's worth really very much to her. If the
Hmm.
players want to know where a small hole in the astral plane is, I think that would be do an odd job, get some information, or if they want a more physical reward,
Hmm.
I think it would. I think enticing them that there might be something in there that they could go and retrieve if they wanted to would be also another good little lead into another quest, maybe.
Okay. I was going to say, imagining a child, being a dad of a young child, just imagining like, oh, I know where this thing is. And it's
This
like, if you
weird
reach in
thing, yeah,
there and you think hard enough of what you want, you'll feel it in your hand, you'll grab it and pull it out.
yeah,
And so that'd be kind of cool of like, oh, if they actually look in there and do an arcana check, they realize, oh, it's a portal to the astral plane. But a kid may only reason it as like, this is like the wishing well or the wishing stones or
yeah.
whatever.
Throw
And it's like,
a coin at this wall and it disappears, and then you can reach in and pull something better out, or something. Yeah, some sort of childlike, sort of fairy tale logic to it.
right, exactly. Like, yeah, yeah. You just reach your hand in and you think really hard of like what you want, and then you just pull it out. Sometimes you get what you want, sometimes you get something better, sometimes you get something worse.
Yeah, I think that I like doing that, like subverting expectations like that, where you play with the words and the perception of an item or an object or something like an astral plane hole, and you and make it sound different, but really it's not. And I think it intrigues players more. It makes them want to go, "Ooh, what's that? I don't know what that is. I've never heard about that."
Yeah.
Especially for people who've been playing for a long time who might recognize these things by normal descriptions.
Right. Although that would be super hilarious if like someone, low level, like, sure, I'll think about like this high level weapon I've heard about. And then suddenly they pull it out and they're like, what do I do with this now?
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. But then they have the high level adventurers coming to track them down, being like, hey, you stole something from me. I don't know how you did it, but you stole something
But
from
you
me.
stole that is the sword of my father. Only one of them exists in all of the realm, and somehow you have been adventuring around with it for months.
I've heard
You know,
tales. I've heard tales of these
I've heard
impossible things
tales.
happening. Yeah.
Yes,
Okay. I like that idea of a kid just being like, it's the
the
wishing
wishing
well, it's the
well.
wishing
Yeah.
stones. Yeah. Just reach in, think of it. Okay. But then we have to consider the opposite. What's going to be the consequence of failure or refusing the call to do this odd job in town?
Ooh.
Is this going to trigger like some sort of thing for her, because she's envisioned this great thing happening in her future and that's why she's punishing herself, even though she's a kid and shouldn't be doing that?
Yeah, I think
Or is
because
that
she's
not the direction you'd take it?
she's clairvoyant, you could almost play her to like be a constant thorn in the side of the adventurers as they go along.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be more drawn out of a punishment. Whereas,
Mm.
like, maybe nothing happens right away, but maybe a few weeks from now, when you're doing something else and you need to get something, it's just not there.
Mm.
Or, or there's some sort of note like, hey, do this job and you'll get this back, sort of thing. Because she's clairvoyant, so technically you could give her like perfect prescience of the future, or you could
Mm-hmm.
like make it not so good. But if
I
you're
was
gonna
going to
make it
say,
like,
I'm reminded of a character from Fallout New Vegas. If you're familiar with that game, there was the little boy who lived under the underpass community on the stretch of the highway. And so he was a clairvoyant character. And basically, if you talked to him or like you befriended him or did something, he would give you like hints about the plot of the game and stuff like that. So certainly could be a thing where, borrowing that sort of influence of like, oh, they fail, they refuse her. Maybe she starts telling them about like all the awful things that are going to happen to them in the party, or like, hints about the big bad evil. And, all those big bad evil things actually do end up happening because they blew off this kid thinking like, oh, you play with rocks and you're silly and we don't want to deal with, collecting the 10 chickens that escaped their pen in the town or whatever it was.
yeah, and then the consequences, like, she reads them their futures and it's
The
terrible,
Dark
and
Overlord will reign
will rise
supreme.
again. Yeah, if you don't collect these 10 chickens.
He'll do it a lot sooner than he was supposed to.
Yeah, the chicken lich, he'll erupt out of his grave in 10 days if you don't collect these 10 chickens.
You never know. You never know.
You never know.
So, how does Penance interact with different groups of people, whether they're friends or family, enemies or rivals, other people in the community, etc.? Is there nuance in how Penance will interact with people, or is she just very one note across the board?
I think with strangers, she'll come across as kind of like very childlike, but like aloof,
Okay.
sort of, not really like fully there. And then with like friends, if they do become friends, I think she'd be willing to be a little bit more vulnerable about like why she is the way she is, why she's so like guilt ridden and terrible. I think she's the type to like talk to herself and like chide herself and be like, no, no, you shouldn't have done that. And like all this like
Mm.
weird kind of idiosyncratic things. Whereas maybe she's not talking to herself in the present, but she's talking to herself in the future when she's doing
Mm.
something that she doesn't like, but she's speaking it in the present.
Interesting.
Yeah, and then I think for like enemies, if anybody makes enemies with her, definitely think would be the type to like allude to like a dooming future for them, even if that might not necessarily be true. Kind of try
Mhm.
and give them some existential dread and make them freak out and give them more anxiety.
Mm.
The
Yes.
worst kind of enemy,
The worst kind, the anxiety building,
inducing enemy. Yeah.
inducing enemies. Yes. All right. Well, now that we've had the opportunity to make a penance here in NPC creation, I think it's time we head into our next segment called the random encounter. This random encounter is brought to you by Zencastr. Of course, Zencastr is the platform that I'm using now to be able to acquire recordings for my interviews. It is a great alternative from what I used to use back in ye olden days of the podcast. And I'm so grateful to my buddies, Dane and Benjamin over at the Dispel Magic podcast for turning me on to this service. Of course, you've heard me mention and talk about Zencastr a couple of times in some of these ad read breaks, and hopefully by now you know the story and all the good talking points. But you know what? They gave me a script, so I'm going to stick with that. So, it's easy, super easy to record a podcast with Zencastr. You log in using your browser, you start recording a high quality podcast right away. You can record studio quality sound and up to 4K video with your guests, Feel a sense of zen knowing Zencastr's multi-layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable. That is certainly what I appreciate about Zencastr, is that they put so much consideration into this, so I never have to worry again about if a connection drops or if someone's laggy or there's just, some gremlins working in the machines against us. I always have that confidence of knowing that I'll be able to get my recordings later. You can definitely sound your best, and if you've worried about what you might sound like if you're ever on a podcast, why Zencastr's post-production process makes you sound buttery smooth. It automatically removes the ums and ahs in your recordings, and it removes those awkward pauses in conversation too. Just set the right podcast loudness and levels while reducing background noise with the click of a button. It's all in one. If you have thought about starting a podcast, who isn't these days in 2023 going into 2024, and you thought you needed a bunch of stuff, it's the holidays coming up and you're like, oh my goodness, do I need to put a $500 microphone on my Christmas Amazon list? I don't know. Well, those days are done. With Zencastr's all-in-one podcasting platform, you can create your podcast all in one place, and you can distribute it to Spotify, Apple, and all the other major destinations. So taking a bunch of headache out of the analysis paralysis of you wanting to start your podcast this holiday season. Go to zencastr.com/pricing and use my code SIDEKQPodcast, and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencastr paid plan. I want you to have the same easy experience as I do for all my podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story. Thank you so much to the sponsor, and back to the podcast. And so, here in the random encounter section, we like to do a little bit of a role play, a little bit of a vignette, a scene with the character that's been made on the podcast. So I think my cousin Seth will do a brilliant job in portraying
Oh boy.
Penance, the Quaggoth clairvoyant child. But the question becomes, who should I be in the scene? Am I going to be one of my adventurer characters, or am I going to be, someone from the community, someone from the past, someone from her future? Maybe she's talking to like a future version of herself or something like that. I don't know. What kind of scene are you interested in portraying and showing off Penance in?
Ooh, let's see. I think an interaction with like a person looking to get something out of it, like an adventurer, like somebody looking for maybe a reading or something. Maybe they've heard of this crazy seer on the edge of town or something. Maybe they're an adventurer looking for a quest.
Okay. All right. So podcast adventurer characters. So we've got the list to go through. So I'll name them all. So we got Duncan, the recklessly brave adventurer for hire, happy-go-lucky, no task too small, no feat too daring. We have Sonia, the warrior woman who started as a barbarian, multi-classed into a paladin who serves to redeem the undead. We have Korak, the lawful evil, arcane trickster, roguish dwarf. We've got Chrisley, the herbalist, botanist, wood elf druid who multi-classed into a cleric that serves living memory. We have Orion, who's the astral elf illusionist wizard. And then we've got Agape, who is the lilac colored tiefling Sorlock, who started off as a wild magic sorcerer with Feywild influence there, and then now has become a Archfey Warlock pact. And I believe that should be all the characters that we have in the roster, as it were. So you have those to choose from, or if none of those sound good, you're more than welcome to help us create a new one.
Now let's go with Agape. That sounds like fun.
Agape. Man, Agape has just been on a hot streak. Hot streak
I think
as
it's
of
the
late.
name. It's got to be the name. As soon as I heard the name Agape, I was like, wow, that one's, yeah.
Yep. It's the whole virtue name thing with the tiefling, don't you know? So where we last left our hero, Agape, she was coming back from her whole series of adventures. She'd squared off against the five-sided fates, the five aspects of fate. And then she had returned to the mortal realm and met with this very strange Kenku, whose name was a gargle noise. And there was a whole Hatfields and McCoy situation where she was stripped of her weapons and leathers and stuff, and she had to go settle this feud. And then after that, she got back on the road and she met this very strange Dragonborn Orja Dragrax. And, he followed her back to town and was being very cagey and stuff like that. And it turns out, he had this whole vendetta against the Fae. So that was kind of like a little bit of a hair-raising situation, but no, but thankfully her archfey was able to kind of set the scene straight. I don't know if that meant anything nefarious or bad happened to Orjid Dragax, but maybe there's a conversation, maybe he was pointing in a different direction, or maybe he was removed from the board. I don't know. Archfays do what they will. But it's sometime after that adventure. And again, Agape is working with this network to try and help this community, this burgeoning steampunk magic-y community, make sense of their growing in the world with technology, but also cooperating with nature. And it's not long before Prosperina, her archfey patron, comes to her and says, there's an interesting individual that we've learned about through our intel that's kind of come in the area, has taken up and, kind of in the more rundown part of town where a lot of this, still bias, prejudice, pollution, some of the stuff that we've been really trying to fight with this mageocracy and, all these industrial types with kind of just plowing over. There's someone from the Underdark who's taken up residence there in an abandoned shack. Very interesting, very curious sort of individual. So I want you to go make contact and figure out what's going on. So Agape says, right away, boss. And so she begins to approach this shack. And so she'll knock and be like, hello, hello. Is there anyone in there? Hello?
Hello. Hello. Yes. What? Yes. Now, what do you want?
Oh, I'm sorry. Are you busy? Do I need to come back later?
Busy. Always busy all the time. No. Now is fine.
Yeah, Agape's a little taken aback by the manner of speaking. She'll try and do an insight check, but we'll say that her insight check is inconclusive. So she's just like, maybe there's more people in there having a conversation, or there's just, I don't know, she can't quite make a read of the situation, but she'll continue nonetheless. And she'll say, well, I represent interests that are trying to help the community, and my boss was curious to meet you. And so I was sent to make the introductions.
Boss.
Agape will hear the clattering of rocks briefly and shuffling.
Boss. Prosperina, then? Interested in me? For being here? For your community? I'm not welcome? I will be. Is that what you mean?
Oh, interesting. Well, you are clever, aren't you? She'll say through the door because she didn't reveal the name. And so she somehow figured it out. So she's like, oh, okay, yeah, this is the reason why Prosperina wanted to talk to her. So, well, if it helps to speed things along, my name's Agape. And what might I call you?
Will call me Penance, and have called and shall always call myself Penance.
Penance. Lovely. Yeah, I think I knew a Penance once. Good lad. So she's sitting there kind of like doing the awkward thing of like where she's like, it might be better to have this conversation not necessarily through a door. Is there any way that you're gonna open up and we can talk face to face? I am a tiefling. I suppose I have to warn you, but like I'm lilac colored and I'm pretty nice and cool. Any chance of that happening?
Some more rock clattering, shuffling, the sound of a latch being unlocked, and the door creaks just a little bit, and there's still like a hook across it, like one of like the hotel doors. And these little Quaggoth child peeks out with very bright, sort of almost starlight-esque eyes, kind of peeking out from a dark interior.
Doors open now.
And she'll kneel down to like kind of be more on her level. She'll be like, aren't you a darling little thing?
Little now. Won't be soon. Bright.
Oh, do you need help with something?
Mm,
Is that what'll get you to leave and make the introduction with Prosperina?
hmm, hmm. I will need help. I have needed help. No. Yes. Those.
She points out the door to behind Agape at a little firefly that is kind of puttering about in the air.
Those. I hate them. I hate them. Bright. Bright things. All around my home. Outside and the windows, and always will be. Unless they're not.
She looks into the eyes of Agape. You
So you
take
don't
them.
like fireflies?
Take them away.
Okay, so you just need me to get rid of the fireflies.
In a jar.
Oh, so you want me to collect fireflies in a jar
Yes. And then take them. And give them
and
To
give them?
as a gift to Prosperina.
you
Oh,
will.
I see.
Give them as a gift.
Give them as a gift to Prosperina. Okay, yeah. I suppose it's been a while since maybe she's had some nice fireflies to hang out with. Sure. Okay. So, seeing that she's dealing with a child and this is a child's request, she's just like, sure. Do you have a jar that you want me to use? I don't know if I have one on my person right now.
We'll have one.
She turns and leaves the doorway. Kind of hear the small pitter patter of feet and some shuffling, small crack and breaking of something, like glass breaking,
Knew that would happen.
and then some more shuffling. She comes back to the door and presents a cracked jar.
This.
Okay, I guess I will make this one work. She has to think in her memory if she has the mending cantrip or anything like that. I can't remember if sorcerers and warlocks know that one, but she might say, "Oh, maybe I'll have to buddy fix this one." But I'll make it work. Okay, so just catch all the fireflies around here and then give them to Prosperina.
And then we will meet. And my will be welcome.
All right, and so begins the Legend of Zelda-esque sort of running around this area trying to catch a bunch of fireflies in a broken jar. And scene. So there we go. What'd you think getting to be Penance, the little Quaggoth Clairvoyant?
I'm not good with high pitched voices, so I just kind of went with a disgruntled, middle aged woman, which, it works.
Sure, but maybe I'll have done some editing tricks, and maybe I will have pitched your voice higher or something like that. Time will tell. We'll see.
Time will only tell.
Yes.
Our little future penance. I think perhaps this is a task that maybe doesn't have something of import to her future, and she just doesn't like fireflies. Being from the
Okay.
Underdark.
Sure. Yeah, she's used to like glowing funguses and like low mellow lights and the
Not,
occasional burst of the phosphorescence from a firefly. I guess must be disturbing somehow.
perhaps she likes the dark more.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, so just overall vibes of your random character that you got to make today and your just vibes of being back on the podcast after so many years now at this point.
Yeah, it's been a blast. I mean, it's always fun to. I think one thing that has cemented playing different RPGs is the like random rolling of encounters and of characters. I do that. I used to not do that so much years ago. I used to like plan and make every NPC and everything like meticulously. But I really have, especially with the new RPGs I've been playing, have really loved just rolling random everything because
Mhm.
somehow it all fits. Like it all seems to. I feel like the dice are possessed and somehow know the right result to land on to make a good story. Dice tell stories, I guess. So I've the random rolling is certainly something I've been doing a lot of recently.
Yeah. or it just makes you better at like anticipating the needs of the story. So certainly I'll use random tables to, in my D&D games I run will help me like, oh, if I just need to invent someone on the spot and then, after a couple of like tiny prompts like, their ancestry or something like that, I suddenly can get an idea in my head of like, okay, this is who this character is, this is what their life is about, this is what their story's about, and this is how they're different, or maybe slightly subvert expectations or something like that. And so then it just helps to make the world that much more richer.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think and it helps you with improv too, being able to pick things up on the spot, which is a useful
Totally
skill.
have invented characters on the spot, which
Yeah,
might have on paper not had any reason or sense being made, but regardless they were, and now they're beloved by more than just me. So
and now you have to keep them. You are stuck with them forever.
you are stuck with Boblin the Goblin. So
Forever.
which
Oh
my
man.
thing I did on social media was Boblin the Goblin should just be like a super popular talking doll magic item in your world. It's like, the hit Stonecast
Ah,
podcast with the adventurer characters in your realm, and then their faithful sidekick, Boblin the Goblin.
Bobbin the Goblin. Yeah.
And then everyone went crazy for the talking doll toys, much like the Tickle Me Elmos or whatever else in the real world.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
there we
Boblin
go.
on
A little bit
chat.
of free world building once again. So, so we're here at the final thoughts section. So, anything else you wanted to conclude or share with? Otherwise, I always leave the last part for the guests. So, anything you've got to plug, where can people find you online if you want to be found, and any other passions or causes that we need to be made aware of.
Not really anything to plug or anything like that. I mean, maybe in a few years, look out for me publishing a book. That probably won't be for like 3 or 4 years. I mean, hopefully sooner, but who knows? It's not even done yet. But it's in the works. So yeah, I guess look out for the Crenwelge name. We'll be out there doing something.
We will, of
Maybe good,
course.
hopefully not bad, and have empathy for your fellow human beings. And thanks for having me on. It's always fun to catch up.
Well, I mean, you're family, and so I have to love you automatically. But it's
Yeah,
always a delight and a treat anyway to get to visit, even if for only an hour. So, Seth, thank you once again for hopping on the microphones and making cool characters. And I can't wait to have you back on to make even more NPCs.
anytime.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Sidekicks and Side Quests. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast through Apple Podcast, Google Play, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Overcast, or feel free to save the RSS feed to use the app of your choice. If you don't like using podcast apps and services, I'm proud to announce that I'm in the process of uploading the podcast to our very own dedicated YouTube channel, which you can find by searching for Sidekicks and Side Quests. All future episodes should automatically publish to our YouTube channel. Visit our website, sidekicksandsidequests.com, for links, write-ups of the NPCs, and to learn more about the show and the guests who have been on it. To stay up to date and interact via social media, you can follow the podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and the corresponding threads, Twitter, now rebranded X, and Reddit by searching for SideKQ Podcast. You can now also find a very tiny community on Discord as well. I would love to talk D&D and showcase your fan art, stories of how you used our NPCs, discussions, and commentary. If you'd like to hail the bard, simply send me an email at sidekicksandsidequests@gmail.com. To help this show be the resource it's meant to be, I ask that you please leave a review on iTunes, 5 stars if you please, to help spread the word and share our podcast with your friends and family. Whether you're a veteran player or an aspiring dungeon master, there's something here for everyone, and I want to hear about it. As mentioned in the NPC creation section of the show, I do in fact have a Patreon for the podcast. If you love this podcast and you want to help support us and take our show to the next level, I would appreciate it if you would go to patreon.com/sidekicks and sidequests. No matter your lifestyle expenses, we have wonderful rewards at every level of Patreon membership tier. Modest, comfortable, wealthy, and aristocratic accommodations await, and we welcome all patrons to the Levitating Platter. Seriously, your financial support allows for this passion project to continue to invest in itself through the tools that will take our production to the next level, as well as provide more content for our patrons and the community at large. Please consider supporting me on Patreon if you can.
Sidekicks and Side Quests is unofficial fan content permitted under the fan content policy, meaning I'm not approved or endorsed by Wizards. Portions of the materials used are property of Wizards of the Coast.
Copyright Wizards of the Coast, LLC.
Thank you for your support, and I'll see you at the pub next time.
Bar to rock on 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Sidekicks and Sidekicks.